think we need to turn on the...
It is on.
Oh, it is on?
Yes.
Okay.
I will double check that now that everybody said that 3 times. Hang on one second. Let me just make sure.
So our tour was, we went out to Genesee ISD, and also to, I want to say Romeo. We went out to Romeo High School. Both of them have some private public partnership going, and they're really kind of taking a look at what are the skills going to be necessary in the future. And I think we need to really do as much homework as we can. I learned a lesson when I was at Fisher. This summer we came across some money and bought everybody smart boards, the Promethean boards, whatever. And I couldn't have been happier. Those awesome. Couldn't wait till the teachers to come back. Well, they weren't exactly as enthusiastic as I was about this new technology. And the mistake I made was thinking that we would get the technology and then figure out what we're going to do around that. And that was a big mistake. It took a while to work through that little problem. We're not going to do that again. We really need to get a group. We need to come together as a community and figure out what do we have to do before we can even figure out what the walls and the floors and the ceilings need to look like. What do we need to do? And then design around what we need to do. And so we're going to go out there. We're going to get some ideas, and we're going to move forward that way. I was out in Portland at a tech directors conference, and we learned about a lot of really cool things. There's a lot of Apple was out there, and all those people, and I was so excited once I left there because Portland had just done a bond renovation. And they were just touting how great it was and go on this visit and go see what's happening. And I was so disappointed because everything they had talked about wasn't happening. As a matter of fact, the things I think they did right, they reversed. They did collaboration spaces and some of the next gen things we've talked about, they did it like to the 10th degree. But the assistant principal at the high school said that they didn't think the kids could handle it, so they took it all out. So there were these like desolate spaces that look like they're supposed to be workspaces for kids and teachers and collaboration spaces. Well, they took out all the computers and all the whiteboards and all the things because they didn't think the kids could handle being in the hall or in the common spaces. And I went into their elementary schools, and every single student that I saw that was engaged in a lesson had headphones on and were looking at a computer. There was zero engagement in terms of with others, those kinds of things. When you're looking at some of those videos about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, they talk heavily about soft skills. That's what kids are really going to need, and they weren't kidding. They were getting what we were talking about maybe years ago, and they really planned for maybe last year, the year before, and now, as opposed to thinking about when their last nail was going to be driven and what hadn't even been driven yet. And so those were good lessons for me to make sure that we're not that district. We really want to make sure that we are preparing for the future. Not our future, and not our present. Not the kids' present, but the kids' future. And that, quite honestly, I don't know how in the hell we're going to do it. Because it's going to be difficult and challenging and mind-provoking. But that's our task. That's what we're going to have to do. So we'll hear more at our next meeting. Hopefully the board will give me some direction in terms of moving forward.
As you're doing this, I remember a few years back we talked that every child had to go to college. And it cost you back then. You still need bricklayers. You're still going to need people that know how to plaster, that plumb, that weld. So I don't want to forget those people that would prefer to be hands-on also, as we're getting into whatever this world is going to look like in 20 years.
Ms. Tolliver and Mr. Baker went along on the trip, and maybe they can address that a little bit, because I think that is an important piece to what we were seeing and what we were hearing. And maybe, if you don't mind, talking a little bit about, we brought some business partners with us. Roush was with us, and Matt was with us, and they had some insight into some of that, and so maybe when you guys can address a little bit of that too. So.
First of all, I thought it was an excellent tour. And what I really liked about it is it's what we did in my day with school. We had vocational schools, and we addressed, and a lot of our students would go to school in the morning or in the afternoon, and then they would go to the vocational school. And that's coming back. All of that is coming back. And one thing that I really thought about was the fellow from Maddox said they have all these jobs and they have nobody to fill them. When we went to Genesee's ISD, they redid part of the school, and what they did, they brought back, they had auto mechanics, they had a welding shop, they had a beautiful kitchen for the culinary arts students, and they even had a restaurant in there. And I thought that was fantastic because this is what we need. Everybody can't go to college. And at Romeo, they just added a wing, and it reminded me of some of our next gen classes, the open space, and it was just fabulous. I really enjoyed it.
It was a very good tour, and it was neat to have the collaboration between not only some kind of outsiders, but also staff and from various levels, including teachers and administrators, and then also, as you mentioned, the business interest as well, and to hear their perspective as we approach some of these issues. Yeah, it's complex. Our final kind of task that Dr. Hofer put us through was kind of figuring out what are essentials that need to be taking place right away, and then what are secondary and what are tertiary. And as I looked around the room, most of us had them in the first and second categories, and that's probably not going to be doable. But it was an excellent tour. I have some notes that I'll give to you because I know you were preoccupied with other engagements as well. But probably one of my biggest takeaways was that nothing can be planned for new space that doesn't have multiple uses. And so they had a brainstorm. This was at Romeo. They had a brainstorm, and they came up with this whole list of things, and kind of the sky was the limit. Well, then they had reality of, well, our limit is so-and-so dollars, and so if this particular function or this particular space only serves one function, then I'm sorry, as worthwhile as it might be, we can't afford that. But we can afford this space that has 3, 4, 5 uses. So that was one of my biggest takeaways of making sure that we have a variety of ways to use whatever it is that we construct or we rebuild as well.
Well, certainly a lot more to come. Well, does anyone have a question? You got anything else?
I actually have a 5-year-old son myself that's going to be experiencing this whole world that we can't even fathom, but they will, what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So it's very assuring to know that he doesn't attend this school district, but it's across the county. That this whole idea of an awakening, almost like we've got to change how we have to go into the unknown almost. So it's neat. I love to hear that we're doing this as well.
Are there any other board communications?
I attended the 1969 alumni that year. Thurston was undefeated, and our state rep, our Wayne County Commissioner gave resolutions, and it was very, very nice. And I tell you, it was cold, but it was a good day.
You remember?
And it was good. It was good. And Jason and I hung out
We did.
that evening because we entertained our well, actually, we had some 1970 alumni. And I thought that was very nice. We had a good day. And Tom went, because he, he was part of those players and he knew a lot of them. So that was good.
Yeah, I used to watch those guys play when I was 13, looking over the fence at them. That was one heck of a team. They inspired me to go and get some football playing in, and it worked. But I was driving over there, I was thinking, how many guys do I really know from this class? I came up about 3 or 4 or 5. Then when I got in the room, it was like, oh yeah. It was great to see these guys, man. I haven't seen some of those guys in 30, 40 years. And, my man Searson came up from New Zealand. And at one point he asked, how do I get out of here? And I go, well, that gate right there. Why, what's up? He goes, I got to go to the loo. What do you mean the loo? And he had the accent, the whole 9 yards. He talks, he's been down there 30 years, I bet, Paul. Another of our class was Gordy Estes. He's in Australia. He would have been here, but he came up in the summer for a quick bit, so he couldn't make it back up again. He's the only guy I know. You hear people with pumps for insulin and stuff. His body got so beat up, he's got a morphine pump that he has to, he's in bad shape, but he always has a smile on his face, and he's not from morphine either. But it was great to see a lot of those guys. They were thoroughly impressed with the field because, we didn't even have lights. We had real grass, mud, and they were totally impressed by the school tour, just to see all the new stuff in there, because you got to remember back in we went to school with, it was fine back in the day, but for these guys to see this stuff, and it was great turnout by these guys, and they all enjoyed it, and it was a great thing to do. They enjoyed it and they appreciated it very much, as did I, to see these guys.
And also the cheerleaders were there too. There were cheerleaders there. It was mostly, some of the students had not been back since they graduated. And some of the alumni said to me, I haven't been in this school in 50 years, and you want to know something? I can't believe how fantastic it looks. And they were really impressed with the auditorium and the cafeteria.
And it was cool. It brought guys in guys and gals from 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 76, 77. Yeah, so a lot of guys turned out for that event. And a lot of these guys that were the 76, 75 guys, they had heard of these guys, but because these guys were legends. And but they didn't know them. So they got to meet these guys, which was really cool. It was a great experience all the way around.
Also in attendance was Dr. Weber.
Yes, he was.
And he was a young teacher coach on that team.
Yeah, but he was the line coach. And he gave the interview with Kara and her film crew. So I immediately called him a handle.
Okay then, there being no additional comments, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is comments from the audience on topics not related to the agenda. Mr. Baker?
We have none, Madam President.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Plus Delta Plan for Improvement. And I believe Ms. Holker is going to take that on.
Yep, we had no deltas from the October 14th.
Next item on the agenda then is the consent agenda. Do I have a board member willing to move the consent agenda?
Madam President,
Mrs. Flush?
I'd like to move the adoption of the following resolution, please.
Thank you. The movement of the resolution by Mrs. Flusher, support by Mrs. Tolliver. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding the consent agenda? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda then is comments from the audience on topics related to the agenda. Mr. Baker.
There are still none, Madam President.
Next item on the agenda is the plus Delta for tonight's meeting.
So, this evening, as we review what we've seen and the processes that have happened, what pluses do we have or deltas, opportunities for improvement? Pluses, any pluses?
Well, mine's more of a comment. It's always great to be in schools.
Mhm.
You know, seeing the kids do things. And, you know, that's kind of why we're here, I suppose, huh?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I love the way Ms. Hughes allowed the students to be the commentators. That was just fabulous. I love to see that.
Yeah. Any other pluses?
PTA did a good job. Everything. Thank you very much.
Yes. Any opportunities for improvement, things that could have improved the meeting or helped in your processing?
I have another comment. It was really great to see the math in action.
Yeah.
Like seeing the math in action and seeing how the kids are, you know, adapting to new ways of learning things is really eye-opening, and it's makes me feel good that, you know, the kids are learning and, you know, absorbing all of that information in a more productive, faster kind of way that they like.
I have a plus two.
Okay.
To Mr. Baker for bringing a clock I can read.
That's important. Any other pluses or deltas? Okay. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is our book study called Sticking Points by Hayden Shaw, chapters 1 to 3. And I believe Mr. Balfordesky is going to see. I actually remembered how to say the names.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I have the opportunity of facilitating our book study called Sticking Points. This is what the book looks like for our audience members. And so this is a book that we've been talking about for a little bit of time now, and it's exciting that we're embarking on a book study. What's unique about it is that for the first time in our nation's history, we have 4 different generations comprised in the workplace at the same point in time. And so hence the title of the book, Sticking Points. So as you can imagine, when you think about working with various generations outside of our own individual generation, you can imagine that at moments sticking points might arise, given that it's the first time in our nation's history that we have 4 generations in the workplace simultaneously. So with that, I would ask that you take one copy and pass it down. Be so kind of sprinkle those to our audience members. And they can share this one.
Okay.
So I'm going to set the timer. You have 2 handouts there in front of you. If you would focus first on the handout that has the picture at the top. And so we're going to have 5 minutes to work independently on these 5 questions, and then we're going to come back together for an activity. What questions might you have before we transition to our work? And go.
Thank you.
Would you guys have the book? here. I was born in 1968. So what does that say? 90.
What are the years?
1966. Okay, so yeah. 63 through 68. You want me to help you look at the table? It's very tiny. Here, you were born in 75. You are, oh, you're a Gen Xer. Yeah, girl, you're young.
Kind of sums it up.
They're having way too much fun.
We have 30 seconds.
Researching.
We are at time. We are going to have a turn and talk with our elbow partner. And with your elbow partner, you are going to discuss your answers to those 5 questions. If number 1 makes you uncomfortable, you do not have to answer number 1. In fact, you could tease your elbow partner and make them try to guess if you want where you're at on number 1. Or you could just lie about number 1. So whatever you're comfortable with, that's entirely your choice. So, but you do not need to answer number 1, so do not allow your elbow partner to pressure you into answering number 1 if you don't feel comfortable answering number 1. So,
We have 2 elbows.
so
Which elbow is our partner?
good question. So Nisha and Tom, and then we have Cheryl and Shirley, and Lori and Steve, and Nicole and Brian, and then we're going to have Christine and Michelle Chase, and then we're going to have a team of 3 with Mary Ruth, Amy, and Lisa. And so if you need to travel, feel free to travel now. We will take 8 minutes. Don't hog all of your partner's time, right? So I'll let you know when you have 4 minutes left. But with your partner, you're going to share your responses to those 5 questions, or 4 questions if you're not comfortable talking about number 1. All right, here we go. And begin.
How do you successful for us and everything? Yes.
Depends on which
Oh, and that's what
I think I have some.
Yeah, we're just in a different mix. I'm in a different mix than you are, but generational.
I think we can go either way.
Yeah.
The Gen X team can go
Yeah.
talk to this side of the millennials or is going to the
I wrote that as a frustration. I wrote that as a frustration. And I said, look at them too, regarding question number 2. And I said, as a frustration, I'm frustrated with the millennials about moving place to place. Because they need some type of right. Yes. And our and also then I also admire that a tad bit because like I was taught to sacrifice, you know, and right, no matter how long, and that's explained. Like all of it. But I also admire the millennials for that because, you know, having that balance where that carefree just to be like, okay, now I'm done with this and I'm going to experience someone else. And I'm like, yeah.
I'm hoping to be more understanding of other lifestyles.
Yeah.
Might have a problem.
And you know, I went to this thing last and I was telling you, I don't know if I told you guys, but I told you. I'm like, hi. Go in and do these jobs. Because I don't want to see someone like, you know, Netflix and Netflix has going on with interviews and stuff. And it's like, you know what I mean? Because that's what they want to see. They want to see young. And you're young, but I mean, not even your age. You know? Right. Right. And also like that social aspect. And I think changes too, because like, I'm sure when you started to have kids, like, then you started to find a balance in your life, you know, because you almost had to. But prior to that, like, you used to hang with all your teacher friends. I used to hang with all my teachers. But you guys did, yeah. Yes. Yes, and now I am, now we are, right? But now you're not. Yes. Right. Isn't that funny? It does. Yeah. And then we'll see, because, you know, I don't know, as you have grandkids, does that then come and cycle back? Because they're not your kids, but I don't know. So we'll see. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. So you were trying to figure out like
We have 4 minutes left.
I'm gonna
So if you haven't let your partner talk, it's about time to switch.
wow.
You know, she's
Yeah, she is. I feel like this one is too.
That's right.
That's cute. All right.
So are the 3 of you,
We're done.
so think about, where's Vandenberg? What generations are represented at Vandenberg, and what sticking points might arise at Vandenberg amongst generational conflict?
Also, it's frustrating with the newer generation.
I see that little shooting on page 7.
So, where are the 2 of you at?
I know it's not fine, but it's like,
you and I, all of us.
Think about today,
Yeah.
what generations are represented in
And then like Jerry would be a baby probably.
with your family.
personally, I feel like frustrated with that.
And the band is probably a baby boomer. Even though she looks damn good, she's huh? Oh, I know. Yeah. No, she is not. I know that for a fact. So yeah, we're here.
Left side.
Well, actually, we're all here. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, baby. 5. And it's not, you know, it is what it is. And that's why, you know, back in the day, like we would teach 5 years, 7 years, and then have a leadership role. When I went to that thing on NUNSPA, they were like, hey, listen, if you feel that they want leadership, hook them up because that's what ties them in. So, I'm like, they're that. She's on our PBIS, they're that, and this thing. You know? So you don't wait until.
Nobody waits for tenure.
Right, but back in the day, we used to wait. We didn't get right until 5, 7 years.
Where you're considered for anything.
No.
And that's the way you
Yeah, right. We have
So when you think about your data tables, what moments might you anticipate
you know,
that
when
might
we went
arise?
to college in Austin, and Pebble, or Kristen Pebbles and Ashley, they
Navigate in those scenarios.
on a regular basis. And like, just like you and Jill and Paige got together, you know, we were just talking about like who gets together socially, you know? Yeah. Oh yeah, Brett.
we're constant. I mean, even now, we try our best. We don't stay out till, we don't close the bars anymore like we used to, but we're like usually Tuesdays after that. We're trying to get, your dash points or whatever.
Well, it's nice to do that. You know, it's interesting.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
You don't, like, it's so bizarre because, like, all we talk about are.
Okay, we are at time.
Soccer games or baseball.
So go ahead and complete your thought, and then we're going to circle back together here. And so we're going to report out our conversations that we have with our partners. And so we're going to skip number 1, but if you feel so inclined to comment on number 1, certainly can.
Over.
I was a late bloomer. 61. Late.
So that eliminates the guessing game. So
I love the honesty.
this is a safe place. So Tom and Misha kindly agreed to report out about number 2, and if you'd be so kind to share your conversation that you had surrounding number 2.
Well, for me, just because when I was growing up, I mean, parents obviously is the number one influence, of course. And then, you know, the Vietnam War was going on, the civil rights movement, the social movements, and music. I mean, there was a lot going on when I was growing up, and those things right there, I mean, really have my views, molded my views in the way I look at the world. And, you know, the anti-war demonstrations, the whole 9 yards, whether you believed in the war, I was too young to know either way. Although, I remember asking my dad if I got drafted and I didn't go, what do you do? He's told me, son, that's your decision, you know. He didn't necessarily believe in the war, but he wasn't an anti-war guy either, you know what I mean? He kind of said, you have the right to protest, and he didn't get down on folks like that, so. And then, you know, just everything that was going on in that era shaped me immensely. Great time to be alive.
Am I the only Generation Xer over here?
No, I got you. Got your back.
So my influence was my parents as well, my dad specifically. As Tom talks about, I had great conversations. I learned a whole lot. Everything was available, learning wise. You know what I mean? So I had to work for stuff, but I learned quite a bit from him, and I think that's what's missing right now. But it shaped me. Now I live in the now. I don't let too much stress me. I don't let many things linger. You know, because that means other thoughts and anger. Like that's sometimes something I can't control. So I try not to go there. You know, I try really hard to not even let it enter into my space. So that means I'm giving stuff out as it comes in. You know, I can't let stuff sit. My dad taught me that as long as you let stuff sit in you, it's going to follow you wherever you go. So everything that you do, you know, will have that bit of whatever, a bit of anger, a bit of angst, a bit of worriness, a bit of scariness, you know, stuff like that. So get rid of it right at the beginning. Deal with it, move on. So I had based my life on that. Done quite a bit of things in my short 44 years of life. And I've also gone through a lot in my short 44 years of life, but I don't think I can get through that without lessons learned, you know, that way. And it was an awesome time. He said my dad had been through all that civil rights movement and all that stuff. And I learned a whole lot of things about a whole lot of people in different atmospheres and stuff. So.
Yeah, and as I reflected back here, I just started thinking too that, you know, I remember the days when JFK got shot. I remember the day when Bobby got shot. I remember when Martin Luther got shot. You know, the riots going on. I mean, it was a heck of a time to be alive. And I think it was something.
Yeah. So one of the things that the author talks about in his book is point of view and perspective matters and the lens that we view things through. And so if you listen to Misha and Tom's responses, you know, they articulated throughout the lens that they bring to the table, that they bring to situations, that they bring to their families, that they bring to the workplace. And those things all influence our thinking on topics because of the lens and the perspective and the experiences that you've had. And so ironically enough, you know, the foreword happens to be written, I don't know if anybody caught who the author of the foreword was. But yeah, so it's Covey's son, right? And so certainly his perspective, you know, kind of to some of Misha's commentary too, but, you know, I think everybody in this room has read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You know, it immediately transported me back to, while reading the book, that image of the lady with the hat, right? And is it an older gal or is it a younger gal, right? And the lens and the various perspectives And so those are important things to be thinking about when we think about, generational differences. So with that, we're going to transition to Shirley and Cheryl,
All right.
who are going to share out on number 3.
Shirley and I both are baby boomers too, and I can kind of piggyback on Tom, but we'll go into like worth ethics. As a baby boomer, we worked for everything we had. Our parents didn't give us those things. We had a job as soon as we could get the license to work. When I was in high school, I went to high school half a day and I went to a job half a day. And that's what we did. We paid kind of our own way, and that is what is expected of us. And we stuck with our jobs for long, extended periods of time. And it usually wasn't by choice if we changed jobs that we changed jobs. So I find personally it's hard for me to wrap my head around younger kids or even kids my own age that bounce around and are changing jobs every year, and they don't have the same commitment or work ethic that we as baby boomers were brought up.
Shirley, would you like to add?
I was in the civil rights movement. My dad was a community activist, and I guess that's where I get a lot of that from. We marched, and we did a lot of things that were scary. But my dad and my parents taught us that we would be respectful. We had values. Now, in this day and age, a lot of our younger generation think they're entitled to everything. And we were taught to stay on a job 30 years and then retire, and then probably do another job. But in this day and age, 5 years is tops to a lot of our young people. And it's completely different. And a lot of things that I admire with some of our younger students and younger people is that they'll step out. They'll take chances that I didn't take when I was that age. We don't dare. No, we better not. I have one instance. Before I started working for the phone company, I worked for an engineering firm. And I worked there 5 years, and my dad did not understand why I left that job for a job at the phone company that was only temporary. And I told him, I said, but I'm going to be making a little more money. He said, but it's only 90 days. I said, but in my mind, I believed that I was going to keep that job. And I did. But he said to me, why would you do that? And I'm saying, well, I think that's what I want to do right now. So, but it's completely, yeah, I did. It's completely different.
So both of those qualities and attributes that the two of you just shared, as you read on to the book, it encapsulates a little bit about each generation. So the two of you really did a nice job of encapsulating one of the future chapters about baby boomers, but then also answering the current questions. So thank you, appreciate that. Lori and Steve had the privilege of speaking to number 4. We were given number 4.
Oh, you look at it. Voluntold.
That's right. We had a good conversation. Part of it looking backwards at the previous generation and what they came through, and there wasn't a lot of flexibility. It was because this is what I said it was, and therefore it is. And maybe to Shirley's point, that of almost risk averse because there was so much writing on the decisions they were making, and so that was a good point. And looking at the upcoming generations, almost a transience, and our colleagues to the left here mentioned that idea of maybe shorter time frames and maybe not a career, but 6 careers and that kind of idea.
I agree.
add anything?
There's not really much to add, you know, I was like Tom and I did a lot of the protesting and that kind of stuff too. And, you know, in my day, you would not have been able to say to your parents, no. Or you go get it for it. You know, I mean, that just would not have happened. And, you know, it's different with my kids and my grandkids and, you know, so kind of evolved, I guess.
And so both of you raised great points, and Steve, go ahead if you want to add to that.
And we talked about, like, why do we buy Windex? Well, because mom and dad bought Windex.
Just peanut butter.
Yeah. Whereas now I go to the store with one of my kids and they don't buy anything without, well, let's see what kind of reviews there are. Or let's pick this Thai restaurant because, well, it was good, but and that's how they think. Whereas we would have done it because mom bought Windex.
So no offense to anybody who might be of the
You're dancing.
no of of the ethnicity. But if you've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? There's the whole Windex scene, and so Windex is the cure-all, right? Because the traditionalist father says that Windex is the cure-all for everything, right? So including like cuts on your hands, or like this is random stuff, right? So just kind of applicable. But to go back to what Lori was saying too, you know, it's healthy to be thinking about as we travel through the book is to be able to take the things that we're speaking about and then apply those to different contexts. So you heard Lori mention her family, right? Her kids, her grandchildren, and seeing how things might evolve and change in those instances when you're interacting with those different generations. You know, it's pretty neat, especially as we head into the holidays, right? You're going to see people of all different generations, right? And so it's good to be thinking about those things. So Nicole and Brian had the opportunity to take a look at number 5. And so two of you would be so kind to share your findings about number 5 and what you're looking forward to.
Well, personally, my takeaways that I hope to attain from this book study is learning so I can better how I approach people in my life, because I am the younger generation when I work in the kind of groups that I work with. Taking this group, for example, I have lived with paper and pencil people who are the older traditional generation, but I also have grown up in a transitional generation where I'm 89, so I grew up in the old lifestyle, but then where it slowly changed into the technology, lifestyle. But yeah, I still need to learn how to coincide with people who don't understand how or why or, grew up or do the things that I do, and I need to understand them as well as be able to talk to other people for them to understand me. I also work in the restaurant industry where I recently became a manager, and they have like the regional manager and then the CEOs, and it's just like they're also like an older baby, boomer generation, to where I need to be able to have my point come across to where they understand but still be beneficial, because everyone underneath me is a millennial. So I need to be that coinciding piece that still gets the point across to the older generation, but still gets the younger generation to take me with respect and still have them understand where I'm coming from. So reading this book, it makes me have the bigger picture of all the sides to how I can benefit my life to everyone around me.
Good application into the workplace. Yeah, for sure. And oftentimes in those situations, they're almost playing like mediator. Yeah, it's neat that you recognize that. Brian, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, first of all, it was great to listen to Nicole talk about her experiences and answer these questions, because I don't often get to hear, the perspective of someone who's not my age. So that was.
I take offense to that.
So that was very helpful for me, and really very similar to what Nicole was saying. The whole takeaway about looking at how I perceive the world, you know, and the world perceives me, particularly in our work circle. And I know that some people that are in my our admin meetings, you know, over the last couple of years, I've sometimes vented about technology, and it's just practically out of this book, you know, talking about, and, you know, so as I'm starting to read, I'm trying to, and I'm feeling, you know, I'm trying to think, man, I think I'm a fixer. You know, well, maybe I'm a manager. You know, we do talk about it, and we have norms, and I don't know. I'm very confused. About exactly who I am and what I do, and so
Just
I know.
depends on who you're talking to, right?
I know that this is going to come back and bite me. I'm not sure where we're going with all this technology stuff in meetings, but I have a feeling I'm going to lose the battle. But but I've also, what's interesting, I'm going to veer off a little bit about this too, from my own perspective. When I first started as a teacher, we pretty much were all baby boomers. There wasn't you know, a lot of certainly not millennials or Gen Xers. We just started coming in because I was born in '62, so I'm right at the end of the baby boomers. But when I became an administrator, almost I think I probably could say every administrator at that time was a boomer. You know, I was at the very, very young end of that group. And it was interesting when I think about that group, and then I think about the group that we have now in terms of administrators, even across the county and the state. They're very different, and this book really holds true, I think, to what I've experienced, you know, over those years and watching that transition. So, and I think it's kind of helped me as a cusper because, you know, sometimes I visit the extra world, but still kind of get the boomer world. So I think I have a lesson coming.
So excellent takeaways from everybody here, and certainly if we had more questions, would have liked to have had all voices in the room. One of the things that I just wanted to emphasize is a couple of points to ponder as we transition to the next part of the book. Is, you know, kind of to Brian's last point there, is that your generation feels like home. And however, we have the opportunity, because of what all of us do, that we get to visit these other lands, or other generations, if you will. But there's also, to quote Dorothy, there's also no place like home, right? So it's something to think about. And so one of the author's main points, and so if you look at the other handout there on page 30, is talking about the sticking points that arise, particularly in the workplace, but then certainly also in families, households, so especially multi-generational households too. But then if you look on page 31, particularly if you look at number 2, the author is encouraging us to focus on the why and not the what. So if you think about the commentary that we had in this room here tonight, you heard a lot about why you think the way you do, or why you travel through life the way you do, or why you assess problems or challenges the way that you do, is because of the experiences and the lens that you know, are looking at it through. And so I would just encourage us that as we walk through this together, that we focus on the why. And so as we visit other generations, because we have the unique opportunity of, you know, collaborating together on so many things, that we take a step back and that we look at the why rather than the what. So instead of, you know, what is it about them, or what is it, you know, there are things that are frustrating, and certainly, you know, that's what we have in question number 4. But if we focus on why we view things the way that we do, the author's point is that there's far more that unites us than there is that makes us different from one another. And so if we lean into those differences and celebrate them as strengths, then as an organization, we can maximize them and then reach a peak performance, which is lofty thinking. But I think it's also a good challenge for all of us. So instead of looking at it as a deficit, if we look at it as a strength, and so I think it's a healthy, you know, lens to take with us as we travel through the book. So I would encourage you to ponder that point, and you know, while also not forgetting that there's also no place like home. So you'll find yourself saying, you know, they just get me, right? So perhaps maybe they just get you because you have similar viewpoints, similar life experiences, similar upbringings. So thank you for participating tonight, and looking forward to traveling through the book study with all of you. And hope you have some good points to ponder. Appreciate your participation, and have fun with it. Have fun with it, and have fun analyzing the holidays.
If you don't mind sharing.
Madam President, that concludes our book study this evening. Unless there's any closing comments that anybody would like to share.
And there will be no further business coming before the board, if this board meeting adjourned at 2:00.
Like, learn. Because, you know, you said this is too, no, she's, I think, yeah. That's interesting. I don't know.
What is this for?
Hubbard? Yes, they're younger than me. James is not. James.
What is Genesis?
1965 to 1980.
There's Lynn.
Yeah.
My middle son.